Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Erich Steinbock, and I would love to spend a little time telling you about my career, my experience in the hospitality industry, and if there are any questions that arise during this presentation, jot them down. We'll be happy to discuss them in the live sessions. I was born and raised in Vienna, Austria. I was a terrible student. My English teacher told me I could never finish a sentence in the English language. My father wanted me to be a cook, to take an apprenticeship. I wanted to be a waiter because they had more girls in class. So off I went to a waiter's apprenticeship at a hotel in Vienna. Immediately, I loved the hospitality industry. And after I graduated, and this was a long, long time ago in 1967, I spoke English well enough because the Beatles and the Rolling Stones had come around and I learned their songs. And I left Austria to move on through the world. My first stop outside of Austria was a little place called Les Uns. And if you look up the hill from where you are, there's the American High School. That one time, that was the Grand Hotel Les Uns. That's why the final stop on the train is called the Grand Hotel. I worked there for one season. I actually went there because I thought I could learn French in the French part of Switzerland. I did not. I learned a lot of Italian because all my colleagues were from Italy. And I knew how to swear really well in Italian at the end of the ski season. One of my friends had a job lined up in Corsica, the island of Corsica. And he was not going to take this job, and he asked me if I wanted to have this job. It was as a bartender. His name was Giovanni, and I said, Giovanni, I'm not sure. I have never bartended before in my life, and I don't speak French. He says, no problem, I'll apply for you, and we'll just tell him you speak French and you have bartending experience. Well, he applied for me, and lo and behold, they hired me. When I arrived, my boss, the maitre d' of the hotel, picked me up at the airport, and on this 10-mile, 16-kilometer ride from the airport to the hotel, he talked to me incessantly, and he asked me questions. And I kind of guessed if what the question was, and I would say, oui, monsieur, or non, monsieur. By the time we arrived at the hotel, he asked, parlez-vous français? And I said, no, monsieur. But the season was about to start. They had no other employees, and so they just kept me there, although I didn't even have a work permit. Also, I didn't have the money to go back home. So I started to learn French while I was bussing tables and working as a bar porter, and I would go into my hotel room, in my dorm room, and I would study French vocabulary without anybody telling me how to pronounce these words. If you try to speak French, you read it and somebody does not tell you how to pronounce this kind of stuff, all kinds of garbage comes out of your mouth. Well, I was the local joke. Every time I went to the grocery store to try my new words, they would gather around, start laughing already before I even opened my mouth. At that point, I realized it is how I feel about this. I could be upset, I could be offended, I could be hurt, I could feel disrespected, or I could think, well, this is a lot of fun. They must be laughing about something that's fun, so I might as well laugh with them. I decided that I would be in control of my emotions. And that decision probably helped me more for the rest of my career than just about anything else. After 2 years, I had worked my way up to be bar manager. I spoke French quite well. And the hotel closed down, not because I was there, but it was going through a renovation. My hotel general manager came to me and asked me if I wanted to go and work in Bermuda for 6 months while we're under renovation, and I could come back after spending some time away. And I agreed, and I went to Bermuda. I stayed for 4 years and never returned to Corsica. I started off as a busboy again, and then as a waiter, and then I was a sommelier. And finally, I had the greatest job in the world. I was the social director. My job entailed doing tennis round robins during the day, organizing volleyball games on the beach, maybe it's a little bit of motorbike transportation. So that was just a sort of very pleasant job. But in the evening, I was also in charge of our nightclub entertainment, where we had limbo dancers, calypso singers, all kinds of native music. And so being the MC for that it was just a glorious life. I would meet somebody during the day on the beach that I could take to the nightclub at night, do lights and the microphones, and then go out and have some more fun. After 4 years, the Bermuda government decided that a foreigner was only allowed to have one job. Mine was designated as 2 jobs. Well, I thought maybe I should just go to the United States. And of course, I had a problem. I didn't have a work permit or green card or anything. But that was easy. That was actually quite easy to manage. I married an American. Yes, that's how I got my green card. And I'm still married to the same lady. This is now 47 years later. In the United States, I began to work quite hard. I took my job very seriously. I bussed tables faster than anybody else. When somebody asked me to do extra work, I did it gladly and asked for more. I never felt that anybody was taking advantage of me because I knew the more I worked, the more I could learn. So I started as a maitre d' at a small hotel in Stowe, Vermont, and moved them to the West. And 7 years later, I had my first general manager position at a 5-star, 5-diamond hotel in San Diego. That hotel was a member of leading hotels of the world. And at that time, there was a small hotel company that also had all its hotels in this organization called Leading Hotels of the World. And that hotel company was called Ritz-Carlton. At that time, Ritz-Carlton had 8 hotels. I really liked what they were doing. We met with general managers twice a year, and we got to stay with them and in different hotels and look at their operations. And I just thought that they had it really figured out. They had this credo. And you know, this credo has not changed since the inception of 1984. Well, actually, one word has changed. It used to be the Ritz-Carlton Hotel is a place where the genuine care and comfort of our guests is our highest mission. We pledge to provide the finest personal service and facilities for our guests who will always enjoy a warm yet relaxed ambiance. The Ritz-Carlton experience enlivens the senses, instills well-being, and fulfills even the unexpressed wishes and needs of our guests. The only word that changed was, instead of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, it's now called the Ritz-Carlton is a place, because Ritz-Carlton is now turned also into a lifestyle brand, which has ships and condominiums and all kinds of other things. So I liked them so much, I joined Ritz-Carlton at the Ritz-Carlton Laguna Niguel as food and beverage director. Once again, I took a step back. 6 months into the job, my general manager came to me and says, "Steinbock, make me a marketing plan." Well, I really didn't know anything. You know, I had very little education. I worked hard and maybe I kissed the right butt at the right time. And I bussed tables faster than anybody else. That's how I became food and beverage director. I realized that I needed to further my education. So at that time, we had 2 children already. We packed up everything. I moved back to Austria with them. And I had a job at a beer brewery in Vienna, which was more of a 9-to-5 job. And during the evening, I went back to school and I went and did get my MBA. When I was done with that, my family said they'd had it with Europe. They wanted to go back to the United States. Both of our children were ready to go to college. So they're moving, and they asked me if I'd be so kind and move with them. Ritz-Carlton was not hiring, although I've been in touch with them and I was in good standings. Ritz-Carlton was not hiring because of the economic situation at that time. So I found a job in a place called Las Vegas. And I was vice president of food and beverage at the Treasure Island in Las Vegas. 2,800 rooms, 20,000 meals a day. And we had the opening planning offices in my office, actually, for food and beverage of a little mom and pop place next door called Bellagio. And in Bellagio, we interviewed 100,000 people. Finally, I ended up hiring 9,000. 3,000 of them were for food and beverage, and I was in charge of hiring the hourly employees for Bellagio. But the gaming industry was not my industry. My heart really was not in it. I needed to get back to the luxury hotel industry. And lo and behold, the Ritz-Carlton hotels called, and they asked me to rejoin them. I took on the Ritz-Carlton Cleveland as general manager. It was the luckiest job I ever had, because a week before I took on the position, the United Arab Emirates government moved into my hotel. The king, or I think it was the president of the country, was undergoing a kidney transplant at the Cleveland Clinic. He was a fairly old gentleman, and the Cleveland Clinic wanted to make sure everything goes well, and it took him about 3 months to prepare him. He had brought his donor with him, and after the 3 months, now it's November in Cleveland, we had for 3 months fantastic rates because we almost filled the entire hotel with that group. We had average daily rates in that hotel that Cleveland had never seen before. The people in the corporate office of Ritz-Carlton realized that I was just lucky. But after 3 months, I was worried because they were leaving, and what am I going to do now? Well, the people from Abu Dhabi were dying to go back home. November in Cleveland is not the most pleasant time. It's ugly and dreary and cold, not quite snowing, not quite raining, just a horrible time, especially when you come from Abu Dhabi. And so the operation happened. The gentleman did very well. He got his new kidney, and these gentlemen from Abu Dhabi were packing things up, filling 2 747 cargo planes with their souvenirs, and were heading out to the airport. And then it all happened. The gentleman who had the kidney transplant, before leaving the hospital, went to the bathroom, fell off the toilet seat, and broke his hip. Which meant, yes, they stayed another month. By now, the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company thought, this Steinbock, he is a genius. Well, there was a position that opened up, which was Vice President of Food and Beverage for the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. So they figured, Steinbock has got to be the guy for that. I took on the position, which I held for 5 years. Food and beverage worldwide for all Ritz-Carltons. By that time, we started to grow faster. We grew up to 60 hotels during my time, and I helped with the opening of 16 Ritz-Carlton hotels worldwide. After 5 years, my wife said, you know, it would be nice for you to be home every now and then. I was literally traveling 45 weeks out of the year. So I went back to the corporate office and said, may I take over a hotel again? I need to stay home. And they offered me the Ritz-Carlton in St. Louis, which I took over at a time when the economy was really poor. But I had learned that during those times, one could really make a difference. And we learned to work with less and do more. And I was able to establish a spirit, and we'll talk about this during our leadership part of our 2 courses, that helped us operate effectively, not just efficiently, but also effectively. After 3 years at that hotel, the owners of that hotel, as you probably know, Ritz-Carlton doesn't own hotels, they manage hotels for other people. The owners of that hotel also owned Rosewood Hotels. And amongst with them, they also owned the Carlyle in New York. So I was asked to be the managing director at the Carlyle in New York, one of the grand dames of New York. I couldn't turn it down, and this was a wonderful job. I lived at the hotel, 1 block from Central Park. It was nice to go to Broadway at night, and in the limo that was available for me, call room service on the way home to make sure my dinner is in my room when I arrive. Mrs. Steinbock was extremely happy because our daughter, who now had a family, lived close by in Greenwich, Connecticut. She became a guide, a tour guide at Central Park. Life was beautiful. And then the Carlyle and Rosewood were sold to a new company who had new ideas. I didn't agree with the ideas. It was very apparent we did not like each other. But they wanted to give me another opportunity. I was ready to resign and retire and do what I'm doing now, which is my favorite thing, all-time thing to do, which is teaching. They came to me and said, Mr. Steinbock, how would you like to move to Saudi Arabia? And I said, absolutely not. And then they told me how much the job would pay. And I said, gee, I really like adventure. So saying yes to the corporate office at Rosewood was quite easy. Going upstairs and telling Mrs. Steinbock that we're moving from New York to Riyadh, that was a little more difficult. She didn't like the fashion statement of the ladies in Saudi Arabia, but so she's a real trooper. She came along. We moved to Saudi Arabia. I stayed for almost 2 years, and then I finally had it. I really needed to retire. I was done with the hospitality industry, but I wanted to share my experiences with the new people coming in our industry. And so I was hired at SHMS Lausanne. I'm with you now, and I hope to be with you in person before these 2 courses are over. If not, we'll make the most out of our virtual learning format. So this was my introduction. I will ask you to do an introduction of yourself, but yours only needs to be 1 minute, because there are enough of you that if anybody talks as much as I do, we'll probably be done with the entire course after the introductions. I look forward meeting with you. I look forward seeing your comments. Please send me any questions that you have. You have my email address, and you have another video that will come after this one that will go a little bit through some of the course details. Thank you very much for listening to me.